Hello, and welcome back to Diplomacy and Discourse. I'm your host, AR, and I am genuinely thrilled about today's episode because for the next little while, we get to talk about something that's about to sweep up the entire planet. And it's happening right now, in our own backyard. The 2026 FIFA World Cup. By the time you're hearing this, the matches are underway, the flags are out, and somewhere a kid in a borrowed jersey is screaming at a television. So let's talk about why this particular tournament is so much bigger than soccer. Here's the headline that makes 2026 special. For the first time in the 96-year history of the World Cup, the tournament isn't being hosted by one country. It's being hosted by three: the United States, Mexico, and Canada all together. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities spread across an entire continent. It is, by a wide margin, the largest and most logistically complex World Cup ever attempted. 11 of those cities are in the US, 3 are in Mexico, 2 are in Canada, and somehow all 3 countries had to agree to run the whole thing as one seamless event. Now, a little while back on this show, episode around 30 or so, if you want to, go dig it up. We spent about a half hour on soft power, what it is, how countries use culture to win friends and influence, the whole toolkit. So today, I'm not going to re-examine all of that. Instead, I want to do something more focused and honestly more fun. I want to take that idea of soft power and watch it play out in real time through one specific event. Because the 2026 World Cup is about to become the single biggest soft power experiment any of us will witness for years. So buckle up, we're going to follow the ripples of 1 month of soccer all the way out. From presidents and prime ministers down to the family hosting a stranger from Argentina on their couch. Let me give you the quick version of the concept, just so we're all on the same page, and then we'll get into the good stuff. Soft power, in the simplest terms, is getting what you want by being attractive rather than by being forceful. You don't twist someone's arm. You make them want what you want. Sports diplomacy is just that idea channeled through the world of athletics. And mega events like the World Cup are the ultimate stage for it. For one simple reason: scale. We're talking about a cumulative global audience measured in the billions of people. There is no advertisement, no speech, no policy paper on Earth that reaches that many human beings at once. Here's the part I find fascinating, and it's a little counterintuitive. The soft power doesn't just come from winning the trophy. A host country gets the benefit whether or not its own team makes it past the group stage. The power comes from what researchers call defining the arena. Being the country that pulls off the impossible logistics, as well as keeping everyone safe, throws an unforgettable party, and sends 2 million visitors home with a great story. You're not flexing your muscles. You're showing the world your competence and your hospitality. That's the whole game. Now let's see who actually benefits. And the answer turns out to be almost everyone. Let's start at the top, with the 3 host countries themselves, because each one walks into this tournament with a very different goal in mind. Take the United States first. The US is hosting the lion's share, 11 cities, and crucially, every match from the quarterfinals onward, including the final. For America, this is less about introducing itself to the world and more about reframing itself. Picture a visitor from, say, Senegal or South Korea, whose entire impression of the US comes from cable news and movies. Now that person spends 2 weeks in Kansas City or Seattle, gets helped with directions by a stranger, eats incredible food from a dozen cultures, and watches a match in a stadium humming with goodwill. That lived experience is worth more than any government messaging campaign. And it's exactly the kind of image reset that's hard to buy any other way. On top of that, there's hard economic upsides. International visitors at events like this tend to spend roughly 1.7 times what an ordinary tourist spends, and host cities are positioning themselves as open for business and investment. And there's a diplomatic dimension that's easy to overlook. By hosting the bulk of the tournament and the final, the US effectively positions itself as the anchor of the whole enterprise. The convener, the host of hosts. In a moment when a lot of the world wonders which direction America is heading, being the country that successfully gathers the planet for a month-long celebration is a quiet but powerful statement of leadership. It says, we can still bring everyone together. Mexico has a particularly sweet deal here, and a particularly meaningful one. Mexico has hosted the World Cup twice before, in 1970 and 1986. It's the first country to host parts of 3 tournaments. But this time, the story is different. For Mexico, 2026 is a chance to push back against a narrative that has dodged it for years. The idea that the country is defined by danger and instability. When millions of fans pour into Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey and find vibrant, welcoming, world-class cities, that does real work on a stubborn stereotype. It's also a showcase for one of the planet's great football cultures. Mexican fans are legendary, and that passion is itself a kind of national branding no marketing firm could invent. And then there's Canada, for whom this is genuinely historic. Canada has never hosted a men's World Cup before. Just 2 cities, Toronto and Vancouver, but for a country that often gets overlooked on the global sports stage, simply being in the club of hosts is a visibility win. Canada is leaning into what it does best, presenting itself as welcoming, multicultural, and well-organized. The Canadian government is even funding the construction of 25 new community soccer pitches across the country, which tells you they're thinking about this as more than a one-month party. For Canada, the tournament is a chance to say, we belong at this table, and here's the kind of open, diverse society we are. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and where 2026 breaks from every World Cup that came before. It's not just 3 countries hosting separately, it's 3 countries hosting together, and that cooperation is itself the message. Think about what it actually takes to run this. Teams and fans and officials are going to be hopping borders constantly. A match in Mexico in one day, a match in the US or Canada days later. To make that work, the 3 governments had to coordinate their border systems, as well as their security, their transportation, their visa processing. They built shared digital tools to move more than 1 million international visitors smoothly across 3 different countries. That is an enormous, unglamorous, behind-the-scenes feat of cooperation. And pulling it off sends a powerful signal that these 3 neighbors can act as one when they choose to. And the timing here is frankly remarkable. This tournament is unfolding at the very same moment that the 3 countries are reviewing their big trade agreement, the USMCA, the deal that succeeded an FTA and ties their economies together. So you've got this extraordinary overlap. While trade negotiators are in conference rooms hammering out the economic relationship, the same 3 nations are out in the open in front of billions of people, proving that they can collaborate on something massive. The World Cup becomes a living, breathing advertisement for North American partnership. The cooperation on the field mirrors the interdependence off it. It is worth pausing on why this tri-nation model was chosen in the first place, because it wasn't an accident. When the 3 federations put together their bid, the United Bid, they called it, the design was deliberate. A joint bid let them present a front of genuine equal partnership rather than the usual story of one dominant country running the show. That framing matters. It turned what could have been the American World Cup, with a couple of neighbors helping out, into North America's World Cup. And that distinction is exactly the kind of careful image shaping that soft power is all about. There's a quieter benefit too, one that works person to person. Americans, Mexicans, and Canadians carry around plenty of lazy stereotypes about each other. A shared tournament where fans from all three countries are cheering in the same stands, riding the same trains, discovering they have far more in common than not, chips away at those stereotypes in a way no diplomat ever could. When the symbolism of "we are partners" gets backed up by the lived reality of millions of ordinary people getting along, that's soft power doing its most durable work. All right, let's come down to the level of presidents and trade deals to the level of regular people, the folks who actually live in these host cities. What's in it for them? Quite a lot, and some of it lasts long after the final whistle. Start with infrastructure. Here's something smart about the 2026 tournament. It's what planners call asset light. Instead of bulldozing neighborhoods to build glittering new stadiums that sit empty afterwards, the dreaded white elephants that haunt past World Cups, 2026 mostly used stadiums that already exist. The big NFL, MLS, and Liga MX venues. That's a deliberate lesson learned. But cities are still investing in the things that outlast the event. Better public transit, upgraded airports, improved public spaces, more accessible streets. Houston, for example, is building a $55 million fan festival district, and Atlanta passed a $120 million bond for urban improvements. Those upgrades don't disappear in July. They serve the people who lived there for decades. Then there are jobs and economic activity. The projections are big, something like 185,000 jobs in the US alone, and around 24,000 created or sustained in Canada. Host cities are expecting serious local windfalls. Houston projects $1.5 billion in economic activity. Atlanta, around $1 billion. Now, I want to be honest with you because this show doesn't do cheerleading. Those numbers are projections, not guarantees, and we'll come back to the fine print. But the opportunity for hotels, restaurants, drivers, vendors, and small businesses is very real. Beyond the dollars, there's something harder to measure but just as real: pride and connection. There is a particular magic in your hometown hosting the world. Kids in these cities will grow up having watched the planet's best players in their own backyard. Communities that never cross paths will find themselves celebrating together. And the youth development piece matters. Those 25 new pitches in Canada, the surge of kids inspired to pick up the sport, that's a legacy that plays out over a generation, not a month. There's even an innovation angle. Canada is putting money into something called the Future of Sport Lab, an incubator for sports technology startups, with the explicit goal of turning the tournament's momentum into a lasting tech industry. That's the kind of thinking that separates a host city that throws a great party from one that builds something durable, using the event as a launchpad for jobs and companies that stick around long after the crowds go home. For families in host cities, the World Cup is a chance to meet the world without leaving home, to chat with a visitor from Japan or Morocco at a taco stand and walk away with a new view of a faraway place. Now let's flip the camera around and follow the visitors, the millions of fans flying in from all over the world. Something like 1.24 million international visitors to the US alone. What does this month do for them? The most obvious thing is cultural immersion, and not the shallow tourist kind. These fans aren't here for a quick photo in a gift shop. They're here for weeks, often following their team from city to city, which means they actually live in these places for a while. They figure out the subway. They find the neighborhood taco joint or barbecue spot the locals love. They learn that the country they'd only seen on a screen is full of ordinary, friendly, complicated human beings. That kind of slow, real exposure is how stereotypes die. Quietly. One positive interaction at a time. Then there are the personal connections. Some of the most powerful diplomacy on earth happens between two strangers in adjacent stadium seats who don't speak the same language but high-five every time their team score. People make friends across borders at these tournaments. They exchange numbers, follow each other online, end up visiting one another years later. A fan from Nigeria and a fan from Norway bonding over 90 minutes of soccer. That's a relationship that simply did not exist before and might last a lifetime. There are practical seeds planted too. A business person who has a wonderful experience in Toronto starts thinking about opportunities there. A student who falls in love with the city starts looking at universities. An investor who sees a thriving, welcoming Monterrey reconsiders an old assumption. These are the quiet beginnings of future study, work, travel, and investment decisions, sparked by nothing more than a good month at a soccer tournament. And of course, there are the memories. The once-in-a-lifetime, tell your grandkids memories that bind people emotionally to a place forever. Here's an angle people almost always miss, and it's one of my favorites. The benefits don't stay with the visitor. They travel home. Think about it. When that fan from Senegal or Japan or Brazil flies home after 2 weeks in North America, they don't leave the experience at the airport. They carry it back. They tell their family and their coworkers and everyone who will listen about the place they just visited. And if it was a great experience, they have just become an unpaid ambassador for that host country. Multiply that by over 1 million people scattering back to every corner of the globe, and you've got a word-of-mouth campaign of staggering scale, all generated by goodwill rather than advertising. Those returning fans strengthen ties between countries in ways that show up later, in real terms. The personal connections they made become the seeds of business networks. A contact, a partnership, a deal that traces back to a stadium friendship. Tourism relationships deepen because now there's a personal reason to go back and to recommend it. Cultural understanding improves on a national scale, one returning traveler at a time, as misconceptions get replaced by first-hand stories. And all of that adds up to a reservoir of diplomatic goodwill, a softer, warmer feeling between nations that makes cooperation on the hard stuff just a little bit easier down the road. This is the part that makes a mega event so valuable as a soft power tool. It doesn't just affect the people in the room. It exports good feelings to dozens of countries simultaneously, carried home in the hearts of the people who came to watch. One tournament, and suddenly there are positive ripples lapping at shores all over the world. So let's zoom all the way out, because the deepest point I want to make today is about time. The World Cup lasts roughly a month. Its effects, if handled well, last for decades. That's the multiplier effect, and it's where the real payoff lives. Consider the layers. The infrastructure, like the transit lines, the airport upgrades, the public spaces, keeps serving communities for 30, 40 years. The business relationships formed during the tournament can grow into trade and investment that compounds year after year. The personal and cultural connections become friendships, marriages, exchanges, collaborations that outlive everyone's memory of who actually won the final. And maybe most importantly, the changed perceptions tend to stick. Once you have personally experienced a place as warm and competent and alive, it's very hard for a stereotype to climb back into your head. That shift is durable. Now, I promised you honestly, so here's the asterisk on all of it. None of this is automatic. The soft power dividend has to be earned, and it can backfire. Researchers have a term: soft disempowerment, for when the global spotlight cuts the other way. We saw it with Qatar in 2022, when the world's attention turned into intense scrutiny of the host's labor and human rights record. The North American hosts are established democracies, but they won't get a free pass, and migrants are treated at the border. Social equity. 2 million guests with smartphones are also 2 million potential witnesses. If the experience is welcoming and smooth, the soft power payoff is enormous. If it's chaotic or harsh, the same global stage broadcasts that instead. And those rosy economic projections? Some early reports showed hotel bookings lagging forecasts, a reminder that the windfall isn't guaranteed and the benefits don't always reach the people who need them most. Soft power is an opportunity, not a sure thing. It's a door, not a destination. So here we are, 1 month of soccer, 48 teams, 104 matches, 3 nations, and billions of pairs of eyes. And underneath the goals, and the drama, and the heartbreak, something much larger is unfolding. A vast, sprawling exercise in winning hearts across borders. Let's trace the ripple one last time. It starts with 3 neighbors choosing to do something hard together, in full view of the world. It flows down to the cities that get new transit lines and a generation of inspired kids. It reaches the families who meet the world at a taco stand. It catches up the visitors who arrive with assumptions and leave with friendships. And then it sails home with those visitors to dozens of countries, where it quietly reshapes how whole populations see North America and how North Americans see them. That, in the most concrete terms I can offer, is soft power in action. Not a speech, not a threat. Just people, a ball, and a month-long invitation to see each other clearly. Whether the United States, Mexico, and Canada actually cash in that dividend depends on whether they can turn the beautiful symbolism of unity into a genuinely welcoming, well-run reality. The door is wide open, and we'll be watching to see if they walk through it. That's all for today. If this episode got you thinking, or if you got a World Cup story of your own brewing, I would genuinely love to hear it. Reach out anytime at diplomacyandiscourse@gmail.com. If you're listening through YouTube, please give us a like, subscribe, and comment down below. As always, thank you for spending your time with me. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and enjoy the beautiful game.